My daughter stole my credit card, so I let her pay for something she'll never forget. The bank statement arrived on a Tuesday morning, thin and unremarkable in the stack of mail I carried from the box to the kitchen counter. I set my coffee down and opened it with the butter knife I'd just used on my toast. The numbers made no sense at first. $3,418 across 17 transactions in 2 days. Designer boutiques, a spa, 2 restaurants I'd never heard of, all charged to the credit card I kept in my wallet for emergencies and monthly bills. I checked my wallet. The card was there, exactly where it should have been. Then I remembered the photocopy machine in my daughter's apartment, the one I'd helped her buy when she started her consulting business last year. The one that could scan anything, including both sides of a credit card. I sat down and finished my coffee while the statement lay open beside my plate. My hands are steady at my age. I've worked with them for 37 years, first in construction and then managing job sites where one mistake could cost someone their life. Panic never built anything worth keeping. I folded the statement back into its envelope and placed it in the drawer where I keep documents that need attention, not reaction. The house was quiet around me. It had been quiet for 3 years since my wife passed. Our daughter Emma used to visit twice a week back then, bringing groceries she said I needed, though I'd already done my shopping. She'd sit at this same table and talk about her plans, her dreams of opening her own firm, how she just needed a little more time to build her client base. I'd listen and nod, and sometimes write a check when the request was reasonable. Rent, a certification course, new tires for her car. But the visits had become monthly, then sporadic. Phone calls replaced presents. The requests continued, only now they came through text messages with exclamation points and heart emojis. She had stopped asking. She had started expecting. I washed my breakfast dishes and looked out the window at the maple tree in the backyard, the one I'd planted the year Emma was born. Its leaves were beginning to turn, red creeping in at the edges. Fall had always been my favorite season. Everything essential preparing to endure. The credit card company answered on the second ring. I explained that I'd like to review recent transactions before deciding whether to dispute them. The representative, a young woman with a patient voice, walked me through each charge. September 14th, Lux and Lane Boutique, $847. September 14th, Bella Visage Spa, $395. September 15th, Marcel's Bistro, $263. Were you in the metropolitan area on those dates? She asked. No, I said. But my daughter was. There was a pause. I see. Would you like to report this as unauthorized use? Not yet, I said. I need to make a call first. I thanked her and hung up, then sat with my phone in my hand. The morning light came through the kitchen window at an angle that made the dust motes visible, thousands of tiny particles suspended and drifting. I thought about what I would say. Then I thought about what Emma would say. Then I realized I already knew both scripts by heart, and that was the problem. Instead of calling, I opened my laptop. My daughter's social media accounts were public, a choice I'd never understood but never questioned. I scrolled through the last week of her life, rendered in filtered images and carefully worded captions. There she was, holding shopping bags in front of a store window, the logo visible and expensive. There she was again, a selfie in a white robe with cucumber slices on her eyes, the spa's name tagged in the corner. Dinner plates arranged like art, cocktails with gold flakes floating in them, and the captions, "Treating myself because I deserve it. Self-care isn't selfish. Living my best life." Every photo had dozens of likes. Every caption had comments from friends cheering her on. No one asked how a woman who'd been asking her father for rent money 3 months ago could suddenly afford a lifestyle that cost more than some people earned in a month. I closed the laptop and walked to my bedroom. In the closet, behind the winter coats I wouldn't need for another month, I kept a metal box that held birth certificates, my wife's death certificate, the deed to the house, and my will. I took out the will and read it slowly, even though I'd written it myself and knew every word. Emma was the sole beneficiary. The house, the retirement accounts, the life insurance policy, everything I'd built over 4 decades of waking before dawn and working past dusk. I put the will back and locked the box. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the photo on my nightstand. My wife and Emma, taken maybe 15 years ago at the beach. Emma was smiling with her whole face, the way children do before they learn to perform happiness. My wife had her arm around our daughter's shoulders, protective and proud. "She's not that girl anymore," I said to the photo, "and I don't know when it happened." The first call I made was to my bank, not to report fraud, but to set up alerts for every transaction on every account. The second call was to my lawyer, Jim, who I'd known since we worked on the hospital expansion project together back in the 90s. We met for lunch at the diner near his office. Jim looked older than I remembered, but then I supposed I did too. He ordered coffee and a sandwich and waited while I explained the situation. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he wiped his mouth with his napkin and leaned back. "You could prosecute," he said. "Credit card fraud is a felony, but she's your daughter." "I know what she is," I said. "What do you want to happen here?" I'd been asking myself that question since I opened the bank statement. What did I want? An apology? Repayment? For her to understand what she'd done? All of those things seemed both necessary and insufficient. "I want her to learn something," I said finally. "Something she won't forget." Jim nodded slowly. "There are ways to do that without involving the police, but you need to be certain. Once you start down a teaching path like this, you can't undo it halfway through." "I'm certain," I said. We talked for another hour. Jim took notes on a legal pad, asking questions about Emma's financial situation, her employment, her living arrangements. He asked if there was anyone else in her life who might intervene, family or friends who shared my concerns. I told him there wasn't. My wife's sister lived in Oregon, and they'd never been close. Emma's friends, from what I could see, encouraged her worst impulses. By the time we paid the check, we had the outline of a plan. It wasn't complicated. The best lessons never are. That evening, I called Emma. She answered on the 4th ring, slightly breathless, music playing somewhere behind her voice. "Dad, hi, sorry, I'm just getting home. What's up?" "I wanted to see how you're doing," I said. "Oh, I'm good. Busy, the usual client stuff. How are you?" "I'm fine. The house is fine. The tree out back is starting to turn." "That's nice." There was a rustling sound, keys maybe, or bags being set down. "Hey, I actually have some people coming over in a few. Can I call you back tomorrow?" "Of course," I said. "Emma?" "Yeah?" "I love you." A pause. "Love you too, Dad." She hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, listening to the silence where her voice had been. She hadn't asked if I needed anything. She hadn't asked if I was lonely or struggling or making it through another anniversary of her mother's death that was coming up next month. She'd been in a hurry to get back to her evening, to whatever party or gathering was more important than 5 minutes with her father. I went to bed early that night, but didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about the moment she'd first held my credit card in her hands, standing in front of that photocopy machine. What had she felt? Excitement? Entitlement? Had she hesitated at all? Or had it seemed like a natural extension of all the help I'd given her before? The next morning, I called the community center 3 blocks from my house. I'd volunteered there years ago, helping to build their new wing, and I knew the director, Angela, who'd been running programs for at-risk families since before Emma was born. "I want to make a donation," I told her, "a significant one, but I have some specific ideas about how it should be used." We met in her office, a small room with walls covered in children's drawings and a desk piled with grant applications. I told her I wanted to fund a program for single mothers who were trying to finish their education while working and raising children. Childcare costs, transportation, books, whatever they needed to keep moving forward. "That's incredibly generous," Angela said. "How much are we talking about?" $3,500 to start, I said, with more to follow depending on how it goes. Her eyes widened. "That would change lives." "I know," I said. "I want to set it up in my daughter's name, the Emma Patterson Education Fund." Angela smiled. "What a wonderful way to honor her." "Yes," I said. "I think she'll find it very educational." We worked out the details over the next week. Angela would identify 3 mothers in the program who needed immediate help. Each would receive just over $1,000 for their specific needs. They'd be told the money came from the Emma Patterson Education Fund, established by a generous donor who wished to support women pursuing better futures for themselves and their families. Then Angela would invite Emma to attend a small ceremony where she'd meet the recipients and hear their stories. A photo would be taken for the community center's newsletter. My daughter's name would be permanently associated with this act of charity. I wrote the check on a Friday afternoon, sitting at my kitchen table with the bank statement beside me. $3,500. Almost exactly what Emma had stolen. The symmetry pleased me in a way I didn't examine too closely. The hard part was waiting. I knew from Jim that I had 60 days to dispute the charges with the credit card company. I had time. I needed Emma to forget what she'd done, to let it recede into the background noise of her life. Guilt, if she'd felt any, needed to fade. The shopping bags needed to migrate to the back of her closet. The spa day needed to become just another memory. I went about my routines. I made my coffee and read my paper. I worked in the yard, preparing the garden for winter. I called Emma once a week, brief conversations where she sounded distracted and I kept my voice warm. I never mentioned the charges. I never mentioned the donation. I was patient because patience was the foundation of every lesson worth learning. 3 weeks after I wrote the check, Angela called. "We've set a date for the ceremony. Next Saturday at 2. Can you come?" "I'll be there," I said. "Has my daughter been invited?" "Yes, we sent her a formal invitation to her apartment. Very official looking. We explained that the fund was set up in her honor, and we'd love for her to meet the women her generosity is helping." "And if she asks who established it?" "We'll tell her it was a family member who wished to recognize her commitment to helping others." I smiled. Perfect. That Saturday, I woke early and dressed carefully. Clean slacks and a button-down shirt. Nothing too formal, but respectful. I drove to the community center and parked in the back. Through the window, I could see Angela arranging chairs in the meeting room, a small table set up with a plaque and flowers. Emma arrived 20 minutes late, pulling up in her car with the windows down and music playing. She'd dressed for the occasion, wearing a dress I didn't recognize and shoes that I suspected were part of her shopping spree. She looked beautiful and confused, checking her phone as she walked to the entrance. I stayed in my car and watched. This was Angela's performance, not mine. My role would come later. Through the window, I saw Emma enter the meeting room. Angela greeted her with a hug, then introduced her to 3 women sitting in the front row. One was maybe 30, holding a sleeping infant. Another looked younger, barely out of her teens, with textbooks visible in the bag beside her chair. The third was older, closer to 40, with tired eyes and careful posture. Angela began speaking. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see their effect. The young mother with the infant started crying halfway through. The teenager gripped the edge of her chair. The older woman nodded repeatedly, her hand pressed to her chest. Then Angela gestured to Emma, inviting her to say something. I saw my daughter's face change, saw confusion become comprehension, become something else entirely. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. She looked at the three women, at Angela, at the plaque on the table with her name engraved on it. Finally, she spoke. The words were brief. She shook hands with each woman, accepted a hug from the one with the infant. A photo was taken. Through the window, I watched my daughter's smile, brittle and mandatory, holding steady for the camera. The ceremony lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, Emma left quickly, not stopping to talk with anyone. She walked to her car with her arms wrapped around herself despite the mild temperature. She sat in the driver's seat for 5 minutes before starting the engine. I waited until she drove away, then went inside. Angela met me at the door. How did it go? I asked. She was overwhelmed, Angela said carefully. I think the reality of what she was being honored for caught her off guard. Did she say anything about who established the fund? She asked. I told her it was a family member. She asked if it was you. I said I wasn't at liberty to discuss donor details, but that she should feel proud that someone thought so highly of her character. The three women were still in the meeting room, looking at informational packets Angela had prepared about the program. The young mother was changing her infant's diaper on one of the tables. The teenager was reading through a list of local childcare providers. The older woman was talking with Angela about class schedules. I introduced myself and shook each woman's hand. They thanked me without knowing who I was or what I'd actually done. Their gratitude was real and uncomplicated. They needed help, and someone had helped them. The math was simple on their end. On my way home, I stopped at the grocery store. I bought the ingredients for pot roast, my wife's recipe that took 4 hours in the oven, and filled the house with the smell of comfort and ordinary life. I bought fresh bread and butter and the good coffee Emma used to drink when she visited. That evening, my phone rang. Emma's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Dad? Her voice was different, smaller somehow. I need to talk to you. Of course, I said. What's on your mind? I went to this ceremony today, at the community center. Oh? They said there's a fund in my name, for single mothers trying to go back to school. That's wonderful, I said. You must be very proud. Dad, I didn't set up any fund. I don't have that kind of money. Someone must think highly of you to do that in your honor. Silence. Then, was it you? Why would you think that? Because no one else would. Because I don't deserve it. I let that sentence sit between us for a moment. The pot roast was ready. I could smell it from the kitchen, rich and patient. Why do you say that? I met these women today, and they're struggling, really struggling, and someone gave them money in my name like I'm some kind of, I don't know, like I'm a good person or something. Aren't you? Another silence, longer this time. I don't know. Would you like to come over for dinner tomorrow? I asked. I made pot roast. Really? Really? Come around 6. Okay, she said quietly. Dad? Thank you. For whatever you did. See you tomorrow, Emma. I hung up and stood in the kitchen, looking at the pot roast cooling on the counter. The hardest part was coming. The confrontation I'd been preparing for since I opened that bank statement. But I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was exhausting and imprecise. What I felt now was something colder and more useful. Clarity about what needed to happen next. Emma arrived at 6:15 the next evening, carrying a bottle of wine I suspected she couldn't afford. I opened the door, and she stood there, looking younger than her 29 years, uncertainty written across her face. "Come in," I said. We ate at the kitchen table, the same place we'd shared 1,000 meals. The pot roast was good. My wife would have been pleased. We talked about small things at first. The weather, the neighbor's new dog, the recall notice on her car that she hadn't dealt with yet. Normal conversation, muscle memory from a relationship that used to work. Then Emma set down her fork and looked at me. "I need to tell you something." "All right." "A few weeks ago, I did something really stupid. I was broke and stressed and I wasn't thinking clearly and I used your credit card without asking." I took a sip of water. "Go on." "I'm so sorry, Dad. I convinced myself it was okay because you'd given me money before, and I thought I'd pay you back before you noticed, but then time got away from me, and I just kept hoping you wouldn't check your statement." "How much?" I asked, even though I knew to the dollar. "About $3,500? That's a significant amount of money." "I know." Her eyes were red now, tears building at the corners. "I'm so ashamed. I don't know what I was thinking. I'll pay you back, I promise. It'll just take me some time." I nodded slowly, then stood and walked to the drawer where I kept documents. I took out the bank statement and laid it on the table between us. She looked down at it, and her face crumpled. "I saw this the day it arrived," I said. 3 weeks ago." Her head snapped up. "You knew?" "I've known the entire time." "Then why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you call me or report it to the bank?" "Because I needed to decide what kind of lesson you needed to learn." I told her then about the fund, about writing the check for the exact amount she'd stolen, about Angela and the ceremony, and the 3 women whose lives would be changed by money that should never have left my account. Emma listened with her hands pressed flat against the table, her breath coming faster. "You used my name," she whispered. "I did. Everyone thinks I'm this generous person who helps single mothers." "Yes. But I'm not. I'm the person who stole from her father to buy designer clothes and spa treatments." "That's correct." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "How could you do this? How could you lie to all those people?" "I didn't lie," I said calmly. "I established a fund in your name. That's a fact. How you choose to honor that fact is up to you. This is manipulation. This is education." Emma paced the kitchen, her arms wrapped around herself. "You could have just confronted me. You could have asked for the money back. Would you have learned anything?" "I learned that my father is vindictive and cruel." I stood then, and something in my posture must have changed because Emma stopped pacing. "I'm not vindictive," I said quietly. "If I were vindictive, I'd have called the police the day I saw the charges. Credit card fraud is a felony, Emma. You'd have a criminal record. You'd struggle to find employment, to rent an apartment, to build the life you claim to want. You wouldn't have done that." "No," I agreed, "because I love you. But love isn't permission to treat people as resources to be exploited. Your mother and I raised you to understand the difference between need and want, between asking and taking. Somewhere along the way, you forgot. Or you stopped caring. Either way, it needed to stop. So you humiliated me instead. I gave you a choice," I corrected. "You can walk away from that fund and prove everyone right about the person you've become. Or you can step up and honor the commitment that was made in your name. You can volunteer at the community center. You can mentor those women. You can become the person I told Angela you were." Emma stared at me. "And if I don't?" "Then I'll call the credit card company tomorrow and report the charges as fraud. I'll provide them with all the documentation I've collected. The decision is entirely yours." The kitchen was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock my wife had bought at an estate sale 20 years ago. Emma's face cycled through expressions, anger and shame and calculation, trying to find the angle that would let her escape without consequences. "That's not fair," she said finally. "No," I agreed. "Theft isn't fair. Betrayal isn't fair. But reality is often unfair, and learning to navigate that reality with integrity is what separates adults from children." She grabbed her purse and walked to the door. Then she stopped with her hand on the knob and turned back. "I really will pay you back." "Keep your money," I said. "Put it toward becoming the person you told those women you were." Emma left without another word. I heard her car start, heard the tires on the driveway, heard the sound fade into the evening quiet. Then I cleared the table and washed the dishes, my hands steady in the warm water. The next week passed slowly. I didn't call Emma. She didn't call me. Angela called instead, telling me that Emma had contacted the community center and asked about volunteer opportunities. She'd signed up for the mentorship program and would be meeting with the young mother and her infant starting the following Monday. She seemed different, Angela said, not exactly eager, but committed, like she was carrying something heavy and had decided to bear it properly. "That sounds about right," I said. I went back to my routines, but something had shifted. The house felt less empty. The silence felt less accusing. I was sleeping better, waking without the weight of unfinished business pressing on my chest. 6 weeks after the ceremony, I received a letter in the mail. My name and address were handwritten in Emma's distinctive, slanted script. Inside was a single page, no date, no greeting, just words. "I've been meeting with Sarah, the young mother from the ceremony. Her son's name is Marcus. He's 4 months old and has her eyes. She's taking accounting classes at the community college 2 nights a week, and I watch Marcus while she's in class. Last week he fell asleep on my shoulder and I cried for 20 minutes because I couldn't remember the last time I felt needed for something good. I haven't bought anything unnecessary in 6 weeks. I've been eating ramen and shopping at thrift stores and walking instead of driving when I can. I'm still $3,500 behind where I should be as a person, but I'm trying. I don't know if I can ever be the person you told Angela I was, but I'm starting to understand what it might feel like to try. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I'd given up on myself. I love you, Dad." I read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it in the metal box in my closet next to my wife's death certificate and our daughter's birth certificate and the will that still named Emma as my sole beneficiary. I hadn't changed it. I wouldn't. Some lessons are about consequences. Others are about faith. That evening I called Emma. She answered on the first ring. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, how's Marcus?" "He's good. He smiled at me yesterday. A real smile, not just gas. Sarah got a 92 on her midterm." "That's wonderful. Emma?" "Yeah? I'm proud of you." Silence. Then a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh or both. "I'm trying." "I know. That's all any of us can do." We talked for an hour, longer than we'd talked in months. She told me about the community center, about Angela's programs, about the other volunteers who were mostly retirees with time and wisdom to spare. She told me about Sarah's plans to work for a nonprofit after she graduated, how she wanted to help other women in situations like hers. She told me she'd found a part-time job at a bookstore that didn't pay much, but felt honest. When we hung up, the house was dark, and the tree in the backyard was nearly bare. Winter was coming, the season of cold clarity and necessary dormancy. But spring would follow. It always did. I sat in my chair by the window and thought about the cost of betrayal, the price of redemption, and the weight of love that refuses to look away. My wife would have handled this differently, with more warmth and fewer calculations. But she wasn't here, and I'd done what I could with the tools I had. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the chance to become the person they were always capable of being. It's not comfortable. It's not kind in the way people usually mean that word, but it's the only gift that matters in the end. The maple tree stood bare, against the darkening sky, its branches reaching upward. In the spring, it would bloom again, impossibly green and generous. For now, it waited, as I was waiting, for transformation to complete itself, in its own necessary time. I went to bed that night and slept soundly for the first time in months. In the morning, I would wake early and make my coffee and read my paper. I would call Emma and ask about her week. I would volunteer to babysit Marcus so Sarah could study. I would be what I'd always been, a father trying to guide his child through the complexities of becoming human. The credit card statement would arrive in another week. This time there would be no surprises. The charges would be ordinary, predictable, mine. I would pay the balance in full, as I always did. And somewhere across town, my daughter would do the same, in her own way, paying back a debt that was never really about money at all. The lesson was simple, though not easy. Every choice carries weight. Every action echoes forward. And love, real love, sometimes means letting someone feel the full gravity of what they've done, so they can discover the strength it takes to rise again. Emma was rising, slowly, imperfectly, but with the kind of determination that suggested she might actually make it. And I would be here, watching from a respectful distance, ready to catch her if she fell, but refusing to carry her, through a journey she needed to walk herself. That's what fathers do, in the end. We build foundations, and then we step back, trusting that the work we've done will hold when tested. Sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes the structure crumbles, and we have to start over with different materials and harder truths. But sometimes, if we're patient and deliberate and willing to make the difficult choices, we get to watch something beautiful rise from the ashes of what almost was. My daughter stole my credit card. I let her pay for something she'll never forget. And in the paying, in the slow transformation of shame into purpose, she found something worth more than anything money could buy, a chance to respect herself again. The story ends there, in that quiet space between consequence and grace. No dramatic confrontations, no tearful reconciliations. Just the steady work of becoming better, one day at a time, with the patient witness of someone who loved her enough to demand it.